Hello, and welcome back. Today I have a sunset behind me because it's the last day of April. Today is April 30th, 2021. I wasn't going to make a video before May, but my online broker has a special offer going on at the moment where they allow you to trade any US shares without paying any commissions. And so I thought I'd like to take advantage of that. Here is that special offer I was talking about. From Amazon to Zoom, no trading fees on US shares. For 1 week only, 26 to 30 April 2021, we are removing trading fees on buys and sells of US shares. So today is the last day of this offer. So let me see if I can quickly transfer some money and buy an interesting US-based company.
The company I decided to invest in is called AbbVie, ticker symbol ABBV. They're a pharmaceutical company, so they make drugs, they work in the healthcare or biotech sector, and they are huge, a true behemoth. They have a market capitalization of about $196 billion now, so a true blue chip company, one of the 50 largest companies in the US. And that's also why they're covered really well. There are lots of news articles about them, lots of analysts look at this stock. Even on YouTube, if you type in AbbVie stock analysis, you'll find lots of interesting videos with interesting opinions. So I basically just read a couple of articles to form my own opinion, and I kind of liked what I saw. What I like the most is their high dividend yield. They will return about $1.30 per share in the first quarter of 2021, which corresponds to a dividend yield of about 4.6%, and that's very, very high. And it has been consistently growing over the past few years, which is very promising. Also, they seem to be quite cheap if you just look at the PE ratio. So going backwards, trailing PE ratio is about 40, but going forwards, it's only about 9, which looks very cheap. So that's actually something I learned this month. I thought there's just one PE ratio objective that you can just calculate, but actually there are lots of different ways of calculating a PE ratio. In particular, you could look backwards to past earnings, but you could also look forwards to expected earnings. And so there are different metrics, and it looks quite attractive, I think, just using this macro structural superficial number. Also, people seem to be quite optimistic, so most analysts, most articles and videos about the stock are sort of positive. There are a lot of buy recommendations, and that's not just based on pundits, like Jim Cramer on CNBC.
But I think it's very good. I think that their migraine franchise is amazing, and the drugs that are replacing Humira are on target. AbbVie is a very inexpensive stock at 8 times earnings, and you know that because you're a member of the ActionAlertsPlus.com club. And I think you can buy AbbVie with that 5% yield and feel very good. It's a bargain.
But also you can look at aggregate scores or summaries of what different investors think, and most of them are positive, and they have a buy or hold recommendation for this company. Also, Warren Buffett owns this company, which is encouraging because if an investment legend like Buffett owns a stock, you know he has done his homework. And so I can just sort of rely on his expertise. So, what is the story for this company? Well, they have one drug called Humira, which is extremely important for them. They're sort of reliant on this one product. In fact, it's the world's best-selling drug, and it brings in about $20 billion every year. So just this one drug alone would actually be a major company. In the first quarter of 2021, it brought in about $4.8 billion, which is 40% of their entire revenue. The problem is that the patent for this drug is going to expire in 2023. And what then? So that's why investors are worried. They're expecting a bit of a cliff. Earnings might drop quite precipitously if they can't compensate for their major cash cow. But if you look around, you see that they do have a good pipeline of products to compensate, and they constantly develop and innovate new drugs and try to tackle new medical problems. So I think this risk that you have between losing their major product and having to innovate and coming up with new products is sort of moderate. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I think they can actually come up with new products to continue their growth.
Take a look at their pipeline here. you can see that they have a lot of drugs in phase 3, which is the final stage before they are approved for use. You can see farther down the pipeline in the early stage, they have a huge number of drugs coming in the future.
So what investors probably want to see is that this number here stays as high as possible until 2023, so they can really milk their cash cow, while this percentage here should become smaller and smaller and drop until the company is no longer reliant on this one product. And in an effort to diversify their portfolio, AbbVie recently took over another very large company, Allergan, who are most famous for their product Botox. So AbbVie is no longer just in the healthcare or drug business, but also, wellness and beauty, which could be a growth sector for them. As a consequence, though, they now have relatively high debt. Their debt level in the first quarter of 2021 is 86 billion. And I don't really know how to evaluate the debt level of a company and where to have sort of a cutoff point between acceptable and unacceptable levels of debt. But most people seem to say that while the debt is high, it is perfectly manageable. Interest rates are low, the dollar is weakening, they are going to have a lot of growth in their revenue. So it should be possible for them to handle this debt more or less comfortably. That's what people seem to think, and I just believe them, but I don't really know. Also, if they won't be able to diversify and wean themselves off of their dependence on Humira, and if the debt level remains too high, then the dividend might not be sustainable. At the moment, the payout ratio is only about 58%, which seems fine, although it used to be much higher. It used to be something like 83%, but 58 sort of is high-ish, but perfectly acceptable, I think. Of course, this is not a proper stock analysis at all. It's more like a synthesis of things that I've heard. But I think it's interesting that this is really what is needed for me to decide if I want to buy something or not. It's really this story, the big question of Humira and the takeover of Allergan, that drives investors' decision to buy or sell this company. I've seen all kinds of videos where people look at all metrics and numbers to decide if this is a good stock or not, which is interesting and important. But really, companies are like people, they have intentions and goals. They're almost like organisms, and that's really what people pay the most attention to. They're driven by this story or the narrative of this company, and so this sort of level of understanding, I think, is the right level of abstraction to make a decision on if I want to buy a stock or not. At any rate, I bought 13 shares of this company at a price of $110.91, which at the conversion rate of the time corresponds to 1,055 pounds, and that's actually quite a lot for me. So that's actually quite a lot of money that I put into AbbVie. I have also had a couple of thoughts about the morals of this sort of investment, because what they do is make a lot of money with the suffering of people. Some people are terminally ill, they need their drugs, and then they just get a lot of money out of them. Is that really right? Is that really good? And of course you could say, well, if they didn't have those patents and if they couldn't make so much money off of their drug, they wouldn't develop them in the first place, and then we wouldn't have these cures. And that's true, there's a lot of truth to that. But at the same time, they really push some of their drugs, try to get a monopoly, and go to doctors and try to convince them to prescribe these drugs. Sometimes they may not really be needed, I don't know. But there seem to be some aspects of this business model that seems a bit questionable, perhaps. But I thought about it and I thought, well, it's not a fossil fuel company. It's not as bad. And I think I can live with it. I think it's fair enough. And there you have it, another step on my stock market investing journey. I put about £1,000 into this company, AbbVie, and I feel quite good about it. I'm quite optimistic. Hopefully it will work out. Yeah, I made this video a bit earlier than expected, but I hope I will make another video in May when I get some more money and invest in another company to further diversify my portfolio. So that should be great. I'm looking forward to that, and I will continue next time.